Welcome back, everybody, to the newest episode of O-Tokushow. I'm Alex.
I am Jack.
And today we have a very special transforming episode. We're going to be talking about the weird, wacky world of Tokusatsu and kind of its drizzling effects onto anime and manga.
And general influence on Western media as well, which is impossible to ignore because unlike anime's influence on Western media, which can be roughly translated as Avatar, The Last Airbender adjacent shows, there's an entire separate market for Tokusatsu / Kamen Rider-esque things in America. And oh boy, are they bad.
People love their punching and kicking in a quarry, you know?
Oh yeah, punching, kicking quarries with just glitter bombs and gender reveal parties while they're fighting slime people covered in shit. Hell yeah.
We love it here.
We do. It's terrible and amazing.
So, but before we get into that, let's cover this week's chapters that we read, and we have spoilers have been put out for One Piece, but I'm sure that the actual chapter is going to be put out by the time this episode comes out. 1107 of One Piece, pretty standard stuff. Luffy decks Kizaru and Saturn a bit with the Gum Dawn Gatling. And we see that Katarina Devon and Van Auger are on the island right now. I thought it was going to be Katarina and Lafitte, because those are the two Blackbeard pirates that have been missing recently, but Van Auger has been getting his just desserts recently with this in the latest episode of the anime.
We also get a bit of explanation of how his abilities work, more or less, too. Like, we know the limitations of it, at least.
A little bit, yeah. We see that Katarina touches Saturn, which is sort of the most important part of the episode, I'd say, specifically just because she now can turn into him, which is bad news for the world government, at least. We kind of get confirmation that Teach is the one who Shanks went to the Gorosei to talk about, because they talk a little bit about Teach's lineage and whatnot.
We know that the fruit that Katarina has isn't the same as Bon Clay's, is it?
It is not, but it's...
Okay. It works very similarly.
It must, yeah.
Wait a second. Well, because, I don't recall anybody finding if it was actually Bon Clay's, because it was the same fruit as the person who used it in Wano all those years ago, right?
No, that's Bon Clay's fruit.
Oh, that's Bon Clay's. Oh, okay. So the one
Katarina's
Katarina has is different.
Is the nine-tailed fox fruit.
Okay, I'm still glad that's the case, because I'm pretty sure I would have heard about people freaking out that Bon Clay's dead.
Yeah, no.
Because that would be the alternative.
Exactly. Finally find Caribou. He's out just like, he's being a bitch, and he's like, hey, I got some news to tell you guys. Please take me with you.
Immediately tries to, suck off Blackbeard.
Exactly.
Like, I've always wanted to join your crew. It's been my dream. Please, just let me speak to Teach.
For spoilers for next week's chapter, we see that he goes on to further explain to them that he has information for them that's very valuable. Vegapunk gets injured even more. Luffy is like, I'll take these guys. And then Sanji and the gang with Vegapunk get away, but Vegapunk's looking like he's kind of done.
He got Vegapunked.
Yeah.
Man's gonna die.
But he says he has a message for the whole world, whatever that means. It's possible he might just spill the beans on, like, the Void Century and everything.
That would be cool. Pretty long-winded last breath, but still kind of cool.
Yeah. And then I also read My Hero, the last chapter that came out, which was, I think it was 845? 414? Really? Oh my god. Yeah, 414. Midoriya is basically just holding himself together with Black Whip, and he manages to give Shigaraki One for All, which their plan is to create like a crack in like his psyche with it, so that he's gonna like basically just break down and explode because of all like the quirks that he has.
Yeah, they're starting a revolution inside of his body.
Not to mention all that stored up power is probably just gonna blow him up.
Yeah, because we already found out that Off One isn't exactly great when it comes to lack of control with those abilities, because you will just become an Akira, more or less. Yeah. Giant blob of limbs and body parts, and then just become unstable and die.
You never want to go full Akira.
No.
But yeah, we end the chapter with Midoriya's like, he's gonna go keep getting more hits in, and Shigaraki is now the wielder of All for One and One for All. He is now the Three Musketeers.
Oh my god, by himself?
Yeah, the candy bar.
Well, yeah, of course. There's no other Three Musketeers that have ever existed.
Exactly.
It was named after the candy bar.
So those are the two chapters, the two series that I've been reading up on recently. What about you, Jack? What have you been?
For a lot of the things I read, many of them are monthly, bi-monthly, bi-yearly, decadely, I guess. So they released a couple of new chapters, and by release I mean translated. These obviously were released in Japan first, but they translated like a batch of chapters for The Legend of Arslan. Or Arslan, or whatever the fuck. There was an anime for it a while ago. They never finished it because the manga never got finished. But the manga picked it up again. By the way, it's the series made by the same person who made Full Metal Alchemist, if anyone's interested.
Oh, okay.
It's very sick. It's about the Persian War. Very cool. Arslan in the series, right, we finally got a conclusion to a battle that we had a cliffhanger for like 6 years. We found out that he's a bastard, or not even a bastard, actually. He's technically not even their child. He's the kind of adopted that, like, rich people force poor people into. Like, I'll buy your child, peasant, because I need a child. Arslan's a quote-unquote sister, right? The actual child, like, first child of the kingdom was a woman, so they couldn't keep them, because there's no way to pass down the royal lineage through a girl.
Of course.
But apparently Baby had quite the head on him, and they tore the shit out of Arslan's mom. So she could not biologically have children anymore, which is why they stole Arslan from a random, like, soldier's family. Also makes sense why he's blonde, and the rest of his family has really dark hair, and his mom's hair is, I don't actually know what color it is, because I don't think they got to that point in the anime. He already didn't really look like his parents anyway. So it wasn't a huge stretch to find that out. We found out a character who assumed that they were, like, brothers with another character was actually their uncle instead, because of, like, just really fucked up stuff. The royal family had one crazy king who had 2 kids, and then one of his kids, he had a hot wife, and he had sex with his child's wife to produce a kid. And then both of the brothers of the king assassinated their dad after he had sex with his daughter-in-law. But their child is currently the person trying to kill the guy who killed the other guy's dad, who died of basically just sadness and poison.
This is what, like, Crusader Kings like to me.
Yeah, I mean that's what they sound like to everybody. And yeah, it's really convoluted, but also kind of makes sense. It's royalty shit. A lot of inbreeding, a lot of like fucked up relationships, the worst possible family trees that are all the shape of donuts as opposed to actual trees.
Right.
It's terrible, but it's very good. It explains why the character's insane, because he might just be genetically fucked up as well. Explains why he's so much younger than the character that he thought originally was his brother, because it's technically his uncle, even though by blood they're not actually even related. Besides by their dad, who's the same person, it's fucked up. Regardless, it's fucked up. But that was the most recent development that happened in that series. Just a lot of politic-y backstory stuff, which is cool. They finally released another chapter for Made in Abyss. Doesn't really release chapters, frequently at all. Maybe bi-monthly at best. Mm. And the most recent chapter they released explained what souls are in their universe, and then didn't explain them at all, because the universe is bullshit, and the mangaka refuses to fully explain anything. As a brief aside for that, right, just to give some context, there's a lot of characters in Made in Abyss, right, who have plot-related clout to them, right? You have characters that are known as white whistles, who are like the best of the best. But we never really get to see them be the best at what they do until we meet them in person. One of the white whistles we just met is supposed to be like the sovereign of mysteries, or whatever, like really cool, sick-sounding name, right? It turns out they have a higher level of understanding of a lot of things in the series that we weren't aware of. But they also don't know a lot of shit, too. And they're supposed to be the top when it comes to this type of information and knowledge. So the mangaka basically did like a gotcha with I'll give you exposition on how the world works, but it turns out even the experts in this world don't know everything. And you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, so are we ever going to actually know anything about how this world works? And the answer is probably no. Yeah, it's definitely just a fat no. There's a lot of visual imagery, right, that you can work with, a lot of implications you can kind of pick up, but they're never going to outright say any of it, which, fine, I get it, but it made the chapter feel less impactful than it should have, especially considering at the very end of the chapter, Nanashi probably dies, but also doesn't. It's the cute rabbit girl, for anyone who's only has like a passing understanding of what Maiden Abyss is. But yeah, she basically dies. We're not really sure. We just see her get crushed by something as Rick tries to save her. So there's that. Actually weekly that I have. Well, I guess this one's technically like actually weekly. So the series about like the demon high school people. I always forget the name of it.
You gotta be more specific because that is that doesn't narrow it down at all.
Iruma-kun. The Iruma one, or Enrolled Demon Iruma is the English translation for that series. It's the demon high school one with the blue-haired kid that likes to cross-dress. It's that one. The most recent development in that has been about how they have a school festival where, you know, everyone has their own, like, stall they're supposed to entertain people with. It's a cultural festival thing, but in hell. And Irma, being a human, is aware of tropes that the demons aren't. One of the tropes, which is hilarious that they don't know of, is, like, horror stuff. They don't have horror tropes because everyone's a fucking monster in hell. So, like, you wouldn't have, like, a haunted house, for example, in hell. It doesn't make sense, right? Every house is haunted in hell. They're all demons. So they don't have haunted houses and shit there. So they're making a haunted house as their, like, you know, special thingy for their concentration group. Terrible way to describe a club, but I just said it anyway. So they're making a haunted house, different for the demons because they're not used to it. And they've been recruiting characters from a bunch of different clubs that are too big and don't really use their, like, unique talents and all that. And one of the characters who they've been talking to, right, who they've been trying to convince to help them with their whole thing is apparently like a really, really good artist to the point where the things they paint are actually alive. They're one of those people that just makes haunted paintings. Because everything in their world's real, like all the monsters and like spooky shit is actually real. And there's a lot of demons that do very specific things. And he happens to be, I think it's a he. It's actually kind of hard to tell, but I think it's a he. The demon here is the one that makes like haunted portraits and shit that kill people. The first painting they ever made properly that they submitted to an art contest killed most of the people who looked at it. They won the contest because it was a really nice painting, and then they retroactively were removed from it because it kept killing people. Yeah, so they want to hire that guy to make all the art for the haunted house. Hopefully, the series does the thing where Iruma kind of passively purifies and, like, cleanses all the demons he interacts with. Otherwise, he's just going to commit mass murder with this haunted house. All the students in the school are going to go to it, and they're not going to come out. There's just going to be a pile of bodies. But yeah, that's what we've been finding out with that one. And besides that, I haven't really... I mean, I've read the same things you have. And the rest of the stuff I've been reading is way too sporadic. And also, nobody who's listening to this has read it either.
Well, since now we've got chapters out of the way, we can move on to our main segment of the episode. So,
we're talking about Tokusatsu stuff, which more commonly is just Kamen Riders and Power Rangers and similar things. Before we start, I just want to know, because I'm a much larger fan of this than Alex is, not due to lack of interest, more so lack of exposure. So, Alex, what do you know off the cuff about Tokusatsu things?
Well, from looking at the Wikipedia article when I was researching this episode, I found out that Tokusatsu, it literally translates to, like, special effects, like, stuff, basically. And kind of, like, the way of, like, shooting, it's like guys in, like, the you know, the fucking costume, like, the rubber suits and stuff. And, like, in, like, miniatures of, like, cities and quarries and stuff like that, you know. It's adjacent to the, you know, kaiju franchise things, but with people. They very heavily reference kaiju and stuff like that in the Tokusatsu. I used to watch Power Rangers and stuff when I was a kid. I didn't retain any of it. That's fair. I mean, most of it is useless. And I know about, like, one or two memes regarding Kamen Rider. But again, that's also like just from secondhand sources. Yes, you're getting that contact Kamen Rider knowledge. I'll see like big fat nerds on TikTok with their big stupid belts going through the whole process, and I'm like, there's no way they actually do that in the show. And then I click on a link, and then it's exactly what the belt does on the show. Arguably longer, actually, because of all the cuts. It's certainly a thing. For the episode, just to do like a brief like summation of the thing, right, for anyone who isn't interested or isn't aware of what it is, you've definitely seen something like it before. And it's basically just any series where you see a collection of young adults, usually teenagers in high school or college, that are gathered together in a group of
color-coded, transforming, spandex-colored, helmet-wearing superheroes. It's the best way to describe that. The original roots of a tokusatsu series, especially Kamen Rider, were more horrific in nature. Like, the original Kamen Rider isn't, like, just a guy with magic powers. It's like a weird mutant bug man with magic powers. And the stories were meant to be much grittier than their later iterations, which is hilarious considering where it's become. But Kamen Rider and tokusatsu, like, media originally was meant for adults. You wouldn't assume, considering what it looks like and what they do. But yeah, they had serious themes with things. Characters would die. You'd have, like, death matches. There'd be, quote-unquote, extreme violence. It's not what you would expect originally from where it began. It very much has evolved into, children's media at this point. But there's plenty of adults who still enjoy it. Myself included, obviously. But for the Kamen Rider stuff, right, because that's going to be the main thing for a tokusatsu media. Because there's other, right, things that are adjacent to Kamen Rider that they've made. For example, the original series that Power Rangers was based off of, and also borrowed their actual footage from, because if anyone wasn't aware, right, in some of the original series for Power Rangers, some of the footage they used wasn't even taken in America. Like, they would legitimately use scenes of fights and stuff from the Japanese source material that they were adapting for American audiences. There's an entire, like, Japanese series which Power Rangers was originally based off of directly and now is loosely based on, because the Japanese version of Power Rangers, right, is still, I think, is still going. They were going for a very long time, and they branched out from the American Power Rangers. Occasionally they would overlap again, right, where they would have, like, really cool designs, and basically the American Power Rangers are like, those are still really cool designs. We're just going to take those, and we're going to make them into white people. And they did. And very occasionally black people, which is cool. For the series that they made, right, with Kamen Rider and everything, there's, like, a pretty consistent theme that follows through with it, right, that has also bled into all the different iterations of series that are similar to it. That is, the transformations always originate from some type of morphing device. In Power Rangers, they have morphers, right, very literal as to what the hell it is. In Kamen Rider, it's not quite as straightforward. They're usually a lot more sophisticated and way more specific. So, Power Ranger morphers are usually designed off of whatever gadget happens to be hot at the time. By that, I mean a lot of morphers were cell phones, a lot of morphers were flip phones, a lot of morphers were pagers. And even more of them were just generic weapons that for whatever reason had buttons on them that you could dial people with. So functionally phone sword, right? And there was a bunch of those. But the morphers, right, for the most part are just kind of like a glorified walkie-talkie that has like an emblem or magic chip or something, right, strapped to it that distinguishes the Rangers from each other. A lot of morphers were just very, very identical, just color swaps, right, palette swaps of each other. But for the most part, right, they were like a unified team. Kamen Rider, on the other hand, a lot of the series of Kamen Rider have unique, I'm going to just say morphers for the sake of it, but they had unique morphers for all of the different like members of individual shows. That shows a couple things, right? One, the Kamen Rider teams are usually much more reluctantly formed than Power Rangers, which are much more intentionally formed, right? The Power Ranger mythos, because it's a longer running series, right? The Power Ranger mythos is that they're like a group of functionally superheroes, right? They're just a group of people collected together by Zordon or whomever, right? Collects them at the time. And when they're gathered together, they form a superhero fighting team, which was intended to be a team. And the whole series kind of crux is based on either the plot being relevant to the team or the team being the plot in the fact that they need to work together better. Kamen Riders don't always do that. And oftentimes, they don't even have enough people to justify it. So there are series of for Kamen Rider, right, where the entire main cast is like 3 dudes. That's it. That's not a team. That's a gathering of hooligans at best. And oftentimes, they don't even like each other. Like, the people on the teams aren't even friends. Sometimes they're literally still enemies, even when they're on the same team. So they'll actively not help each other in fights. It's very funny every time it happens. And the more recent series they've released for Kamen Riders, the teams have been getting bigger, and they've also been getting more homogenous as well. There's less edge to the newer series that they make, which, fits, right? As their audience is getting younger and younger as they keep making, more and more of these shows. The other thing that Kamen Rider always does that Power Rangers don't do, but used to do, because they used to borrow the footage, right, is that every single Kamen Rider is known for doing a dropkick. That is a signature thing. Yes. So the final technique, or ultimate attack, for basically every single Kamen Rider who has ever existed and will likely ever exist, is a dropkick. It's specifically a dive kick with 1 foot extended and 1 foot, creased in. And that kick has destroyed monsters, buildings, mutants, gods, and time. Just the concept of time. So they're very powerful at drop kicking for some reason. And some series which are much more... There's some series that are much more tongue-in-cheek about the tropes that Kamen Riders have. And my favorite example of them are for things like Kamen Rider Build, which is a series that came out pretty recently, all things considered anyway. It's 2018, 2017, where the one of the shticks of the main character is that he's a scientist and he's really smart, and his ultimate technique is a dive kick, a Kamen Rider dive kick, right? But he's guided on rails that he mathematically set up so it's at a perfect angle to kick somebody to death.
Wow.
Yeah, so he just forms the math in his head, builds a rail and just gets launched out of it like a missile and hits somebody. It's great. But yeah, those are like the most common things, right? Outside of that, though, there's not really that much consistency. Oftentimes, the enemy is other riders of some kind, right? Other people who have the ability to transform as well, that are evil, but you never see their human form unless it's like at the end of the series, where it's the inverse, right? Where most of the time you interact with the heroes in their human form, and you only ever see them transform when they're fighting against bad guys. And there's other series where there's only a single enemy that's a Kamen Rider, and then they just have like a billion goons. Somehow. We don't always know where they get them from, but it's usually like a space virus or
Craigslist, you know?
Something. Yeah, they hire Americans. These series, right, have been going on for a really long time. There's an entire culture around them, and they've been influential in, like, Japan as just an institution since the 70s. They've been around for a really long time, right? There's people nowadays who have grandkids that watch this when they were, adults, which is crazy. But moving off of, like, just the main line Kamen Rider stuff, right? The original source material for a lot of these Tokusatsu fans. Because I will keep mentioning Tokusatsu separately from Kamen Rider, because there are other series that aren't Kamen Rider. Kamen Rider just happens to be the most famous one. And for good reason, in my opinion. It's probably the better one as well. But the things that they inspired, though, I think the actual, like, diehard fans of Kamen Rider would respect. More so than they would find hilarious. Or insulting, honestly. So, of course, the most popular spin-off to Kamen Rider, which at this point in its history is arguably more popular than Kamen Rider, would be Power Rangers. Power Rangers is the Western equivalent to Kamen Rider, to the point where they originally just stole their shit, right? It's just the same formula, cookie cutter, pasted it over here, everybody loved it. It's stupid. It's actually dumber than the original source material, mostly because the people who made Power Rangers had absolutely no intention of taking it nearly as seriously as the people who made Kamen Rider initially. The series for Kamen Rider have only gotten more silly with time, but they never started silly, right? Power Rangers started fucking silly. The very first, like, super big bad guy they had was a witch in a Harlequin costume that was made out of rugs that you could buy at a bazaar. She had a voice that it can be mimicked by anybody because it is unreal. And she was insane and crotchety and over the top. And then immediately after that, they had an enemy who was just a red man who was naked and covered in spikes that was just so angry and so stupid they could never win. And then they had a sentient pile of purple goo that became an ooze guy for the movie as their main villain in that one. So, like, it's never been serious. And it has never gotten serious since. The closest thing to serious that Power Rangers has ever been is individual character arcs. Never full-on series. They do not get serious, and that is fine. Because Power Rangers speaks to a Western demographic when it comes to this type of thing. Because in Japan, right, with Tokusatsu things, a lot of the stunts they perform are respected, right? It's respectable to see these actors in these costumes perform these feats of athleticism, right, and acrobatics with pyrotechnics and all the like, right? In America, we like watching people do this because it's funny. Watching people in costumes in America is a joke versus in Japan where it's an art form. You know what I mean? So, like, the reason Power Rangers was so good and so taken well, like, by Western audiences is because they knew immediately what they were doing was gonna be dumb as shit. And they're like, you know what? We're gonna play into it, and that's gonna make it better. And it did. There's less series, officially speaking anyway, for Power Rangers than Kamen Rider, right? There's 30 series of Power Rangers, and there's 34 series of Kamen Rider. However, Power Rangers started almost a decade after Kamen Rider did, and it has more extra material beyond just the main series than Kamen Rider does. Just with extra movies, comic books, everything. The popularity of Power Rangers, ironically, also caused other spin-offs. The popularity of Power Rangers, ironically, spawned its own spin-offs. Which means this would be like a tertiary source if you were trying to write a paper for something, right? This is 2 levels removed from the original source material now, right? And they still saw some level of popularity. They have not come back because they were not as good as the original or the inspiration from it. But I still like them for how ridiculous they managed to become. I would argue, after Kamen Rider, after Power Rangers, the third most popular iteration of this thing, or at least to a recognizable audience in America, would be the Big Bad Beetleborgs. For anyone who actually isn't aware of what these guys are, which wouldn't be surprised, they're basically Power Rangers, but like their costumes are cooler, and instead of them wearing as much spandex or latex, they wore like plastic armor pieces instead. The Beetleborgs are more like robots, whereas the Power Rangers are more like superheroes with masks. But the Beetleborgs were also really stupid, but they took themselves a bit more seriously, which ended up making them more campy as a result, which is fine. And there's still quite a few people who enjoy the series because of how goddamn silly it is. But after you get from past the Beetleborgs, it starts getting weird and worse. Have you ever heard of a series called VR Troopers before? There's worse series that were spin-off of this one as well, after the, success of Power Rangers and Beetleborgs. And one of those series was known as VR Troopers. Do you know what that is?
I'm familiar, yes. John did a video about VR Troopers.
Yeah, so they were also really bad. The costumes for them, depending on who you ask, were better, right, than some of these other series, but it's not good. It's not good. But that's another series, right, that was spawned from this. They tried to make, like a superhero team with people who transformed. You can tell in some of the costumes they had for VR Troopers that they were very clearly just recycled Power Rangers costumes / Kamen Rider Tokusatsu costumes that they borrowed from people in Japan. There's pieces slapped onto them that aren't supposed to be there, that just looks off. The colors are just kind of crazy. And there's a design through line, I guess, that is just kind of meant to be eye-catching but not really substantial. The weirdest, in my opinion, and worst looking series they've ever made that was Power Rangers adjacent was called Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills.
This was one of the few that in Team 4-Star Vegeta asked Gohan about.
Another reference, right, to an older series similar to this that's just god-awful. I want you to see what these people look like, Alex.
Oh, please, send me an image here.
This is what they look like when they're in their superhero forms.
Oh, what is this? This looks like the start of an adult film.
I don't know why they look like they're dressed for an 80s porn video, but they are. And oh my god, is it just between the hair and the fact that they're oiled up for all of the scenes where they're transformed, and also the fact that their costumes, their costumes are just not even costumes.
Yeah, no, they're just clothes.
Like, they're actually just wearing, like, the guys are just wearing, like, wrestling unitards with, like, a plastic belt on it. The ladies are just wearing exercise equipment, or like, exercise clothes for women. One of them is literally just wearing a sports bra and spats. Like, that's it. It's just, and they're all, of course, wearing, like, the most goofy luchador-esque masks ever, right? Like, it doesn't cover the full heads. Their mouths and nose are, for whatever reason, are just silver.
They've got a fucking Spirit Halloween, like, silver face mask over their, like, mouth and nose.
And the eye holes are so big, you just see a lot of their face underneath it. Like, it's so clearly just a costume. Like, at least with the Power Rangers, you can assume, like, oh, this is maybe armor, right? You could, like, vaguely pretend it's armor if you're a child. I don't think anyone could pretend anything these characters wear as actual armor. It makes no sense. The fact that the setting takes place in Beverly Hills, right, honestly makes it funnier because of the costumes. Because it fits a really specific aesthetic and vibe, even though the series insisted on putting them in like settings similar to Power Rangers. For example, Alex, this will be a different one. This is them in, like, their main base? Yeah, they just have, like, a rock sex dungeon in the middle of Beverly Hills, I guess.
And just 4 little tambourine platforms that they stand on posing up.
This is what their drip looks like in normal human form.
They should just wear these clothes. These make more sense than the fucking...
Yeah, I know!
Like...
I just don't get it. One is wearing a regular dress, another one's dressed like the Doctor from Doctor Who, one of them dressed like a librarian, and the last person's just a guy. It still makes more sense than whatever they wear when they transform.
Yeah, the last guy just wear a polo and jeans. Like, that's...
Like, come on, that's... It just... Oh, God. This particular series is such an extreme level of silly that it 100% loops back around to being funny again.
If we ever decide to do, like, commentary stuff for our channel, like
a riff track or something.
Yeah, this would be a perfect thing to start with.
Oh, yeah. By the way, this is what one of their main antagonists looks like.
Oh, it's Captain Bible.
Yep, good old Captain Bible wearing more Spirit Halloween pieces of armor.
Yeah. I can, like, see the plastic seams on this costume. This is...
it's really, really bad. The sound design also does not lend to it at all. There's no weight behind any of the attacks. It's just... I cannot express to you how just tacky and terrible the series is. But it is hilarious, right? And very beloved by anyone who actually watched the damn thing.
Sure.
So with that out of the way, right, just like a brief summary of the original source material, some of the things that it was based off of, the spin-off things that that took off afterwards, right? I can tell you, right, dear listener, and Alex, right, who's not been exposed to a lot of this, some of my favorites of, like, these actual respective series, right? The greatest hits, right, for me. Just to give you an idea of, like, my tastes in this, and also to give you a legitimate recommendation, right? I've been exposed to enough of this, in my opinion, at this point, where I could give you decent recommendations for a lot of these series. So, of Kamen Rider, if you're interested in watching any of it, right? I mean, to be fair, of Tokusatsu stuff, my recommendation would be to watch Kamen Rider.
Yeah, of course.
And of Kamen Rider, right, watching any of the original, like, Showa era things, right, from, like, 1970s to late 80s into the 90s, right? Anything from that era, if you really want, like, a full appreciation of the art form, that's what you would watch, right? Of those, right, I enjoyed Kamen Rider Black. I thought that was cool. The original series could be difficult to get into, because if you think the costumes don't look great now, they didn't look that good back then either. And the effects were even worse. But there's a charm to it, because it's so hokey and so old-fashioned. And it's a glimpse into, like, an era of Japanese media that you just cannot find anywhere else, right? There's... good luck finding it, though, as a side note, right? How hard was it for you to find any of this, by the way, Alex? Because you went to try.
The first 3 seasons of Power Rangers, like the American version, are on Netflix. You can find those there. And if you want to, like, fucking stream, like a Kamen Rider or anything, you're gonna need a VPN, either like you're gonna need a fucking NordVPN or Atlas VPN or Swift VPN or whatever dumb bullshit VPN to churn your location, presumably to Japan, to get something else.
You could also go the other route where you're going to need 6 different antivirus softwares and a willingness to commit many online crimes.
Or you could pay $3 a DVD for every season of Kamen Rider, which is a lot of them.
There's 34 series, not just seasons, full-on a series of Kamen Rider. And individual series of them can have upwards of 100 episodes, more or less. So the average is 50. So that's a lot of money. Like, holy balls. That's a lot of money for Kamen Rider. If you're interested, right, for the original series, I would say watch Black of the original. It was very cool. From the next era coming after that, the Heisei era phase of it, right, from the 2000s to the basically to the 2010s, right, 2000 to 2009, I'd say watch Akito. Akito was really cool. Or Kabuto. Kabuto is also really cool. And Kabuto is one of the more recognizable Kamen Rider designs as well, if you ever wanted to see one that looked like something you recognized. Of the era after that, which I guess is technically listed as Heisei Era 2, weird, but that's the era that I first started watching. I watched the old stuff after watching the stuff that I first saw as a kid, actually. So the first series that I ended up seeing of any of them was actually probably, I think it's Triple O was actually the one that I saw for the first time. And Triple O is cool. Some of the designs are very silly, and the plot is ridiculous. But then again, that's just the way of the world when it comes to Kamen Rider. Let's see, Kamen Rider Wizard was pretty cool. If you like wizards and magic, it's very loosely wizards and magic, but it's very cool. If you want one that's really silly but surprisingly cool, I'd suggest you watch Kamen Rider Game. That one is about fruit-based samurai.
All right, okay.
Main character is an orange that becomes a samurai.
Right.
It's cooler than it sounds. Morphers for them, by the way, in a game is literally just a fruit and a knife that they cut the fruit in half with, and then they transform. Perfect. Yeah, it's awesome. They have like icy forms with themselves and like, you know, different fruit baskets, and it doesn't matter. It's gonna keep sounding dumber if I describe it. I would suggest you watch it if you're interested. Kamen Rider Ghost was pretty cool. One of my favorite series that came out in this period, which is Kamen Rider X-Aid. X-Aid is excellent. Big fan of X-Aid. It has one of my favorite stories that they actually did for it. And the designs are cool, but it's the beginning of the end when it comes to the good designs, in my opinion, though. The X-Aid designs are not great for me personally because the heads on the characters are too big. Like, they're starting to become chibified with time. And I wasn't a huge fan with a lot of the designs in X-Aid because their heads were too big. I really enjoyed the story, though. So if anyone's interested in watching a Kamen Rider series that's semi-recent, because this came out in 2016, right? I would highly recommend you start with X-Aid, because it's very good. Another one that came out right after, 2 series right after actually, which were both bangers, was Kamen Rider Build, also very fun, and Kamen Rider Zeo, or Z-O. Zeo is weird because there's like some references to previous ones before them, and also there's like actual time travel, and the fact that the antagonist is the protagonist, but from the future where he's evil. It's a lot, but it's very fun. Big fan. Anyone who has any interest in nostalgia that they don't even understand, I would recommend you watch the anniversary series they make. So occasionally, right, every decade or so, right, they will make a compilation series, basically, I guess, right? The one that comes to mind, right, at first is Kamen Rider Decade. The gimmick there is pretty self-explanatory. But Decade, right, is a decade of Kamen Rider stuff, right? It's actually more than a decade, but it's supposed to encompass a decade of canon, right, within their series, where the main character has powers that they borrow from all the previous Kamen Riders in his era. So you get some cool stuff when you see that happen, right? You get references to previous series and stuff, and you get powers and things from different characters. right? And even if you didn't see the source material, it's actually cooler to see it in Decade being used as a reference to something you never saw. Just because all you see, right, is the cool stuff it does. You don't get to see all the goofy shit that comes with it, right? So when he transforms into a literal missile, it's cooler than when you see the guy having to walk around with a missile costume all the time and how cumbersome it is. But those are all great, right? There's some newer series that they made as well that I didn't get a chance to see. I might try to watch Gotchard at any point if I have an interest in that. That's the most recent one that they released right last year. Yeah, those are of the like Kamen Rider stuff that I would recommend to anybody who'd be interested in watching. Very fun. Power Rangers is much bigger. Of the Power Rangers, what do you remember at all?
I was a big fan of Dino Thunder, from what I remember.
Hell yeah. Oh yeah, that's top 10 right there.
I vaguely remember watching like the Ninja one, I think.
Okay, which Ninja one?
I could not tell you.
Okay, I can tell you based on the designs of the characters. Were the ninja characters mixed genders? Like, were there actual females in the show? Or was it just guys?
It was the one where they had...
Was one of them black?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay. And by that I mean like the actor, not the Power Ranger.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one you're thinking of is Ninja Storm.
Right, okay. That sounds about right.
Yeah, and Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder were both roughly around the same time as each other as well. So it makes sense as to why you would have remembered those.
Yep, that's definitely what I remember from.
And Ninja Storm, also top 10 for me. Very good. My favorite shtick of the entirety of Ninja Storm, though, was that they basically gave me a self-insert character. There was just a random nerdy Chinese, or Asian, I think it's Japanese, but Asian guy that was, like a person who helped them do, like, their field research. And then he just became a ranger who could transform into he had a samurai form that could transform into a fast ninja. Very cool. Also, ironically, one of the only Asian Power Rangers.
Really? I remember there being like there was like a whole big thing about like, they had an Asian girl as like the Yellow Ranger. I think that was like a whole thing, right?
Yeah, she doesn't count.
All right, fair enough.
The Asian female Power Rangers don't matter to me, Alex.
Right.
I'm an Asian man.
Okay.
I wanted a self-insert character. Also, the token female characters are barely characters most of the time, especially the token Asian female character. Because, like, at least the token white female character, like the Pink Ranger most of the time, right? At least the token white female, Ranger gets, like, a romantic subplot or some shit, right? Like, they get to be a damsel in distress. All the female, Asian characters are just there. It's just an extra body to help beat people up. A fun thing, by the way, for the first series of Power Rangers, right, for the female character who was Asian, the Japanese character was a guy.
Oh, okay.
So in some of the fight scenes, with the original series, because they used the Japanese footage, Yellow Rangers got a bit of a package. And it's very funny, in retrospect, watching it. They're just packing heat, I guess. It also explains why, for anyone who is curious, in the original series, only the female, like the Pink Ranger, had a skirt on for their costume when they transformed. The Yellow Ranger didn't have one. And they were supposed to be a lady in the American version. Reason being, the Japanese version, they were a guy. Didn't have the skirt. It was just another the sausage having, dick kicker. And, yeah, that just carried through with some of the other series when they borrowed, things, if they ever did, like, gender swaps, right, for the American version. Luckily, right, most of the time the characters have very, like, kind of amorphous physical shapes, right? Not a lot of shapely female Japanese actresses that played Power Rangers, right? So you could always kind of get away with it. But for the actual Power Rangers, though, of those series, good choices, right? Good taste, right?
Yeah.
Of any Power Ranger series to like, or remember at least as a child, those are two of the best ones. My favorites that they've ever released. I am not on the Turbo wagon. I've always been of the opinion the Turbo was ass. And if you weren't aware, by the way, Alex, recently there was like a funny thing where streaming events on Twitch where people were just watching the original Power Ranger series again. Right? I think it was to hype people up for the Power Rangers movie that came out, like, a couple years ago. Right? Like, the new remake, right? That was terrible. But still, right? It was getting people hyped for that. And a lot of people were really hyped to watch Turbo. Because there was this weird Mandela effect to it where people thought it was something that it wasn't, right? They watched it, and it was awful. It was really bad. I've been of the mindset that Turbo has never been good, right? I've never been a fan of it, mostly because I just don't like it when the Zords are vehicles. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't have the same impact as the animal monsters, right? Because that's like a part of the whole aesthetic. But in Turbo, all of their Zords were just cars. Like, oh, I got a sports car. The other guy's a truck. You know, we got a semi somewhere or something. It just doesn't feel like Power Rangers, even if the Megazord that they created was kind of sick. But it looked more like a Transformer and less like a Megazord. But my first top tier series of the actual like original series they released, like the first 10 seasons, right, was Time Force and Wild Force. I'd liked both of those a lot growing up. The original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and the alien ones and Zeo, I actually wasn't a huge fan of. The original cast of Power Rangers, besides Tommy, you know, God rest his soul, always will be my favorite Power Rangers actor. Mostly because he's in like 12 series. He just never left. But aside from Tommy, of the original cast of Power Rangers, I wasn't a huge fan of them, honestly. I didn't like their acting or their chemistry that much. And I liked the story for Time Force a lot more than any of the stories before that. I liked the designs of like the costumes and the Zords for Wild Force a lot more than some of the ones that came before them as well. Of course, right after that, season 11 is when shit starts getting insane. Because that's when Ninja Storm got released. That's where you started being cognizant as a human being, because that was in 2003. How old were you in 2003? Not to dox you, but...
I must have been around 4, maybe 5 towards the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. That's like when you started developing real memories, was when Ninja Storm came out, which makes sense, right? Is why that would be something for you. That for me, that's when I was like around 10-ish. I'm older than you by a couple, well, hypothetically.
Probably
probably a couple years or closer, doesn't matter. But yeah, I was like developmental at that time as well, but older, right? Like actual target demographic. You would have been a bit too young for the regular target demographic, right? It would have been really sick background noise for you.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But for me, it was like, actually, I'm that guy that they're trying to sell the stupid toys for. And, Ninja Storm is amazing. Is it stupid? Yes. Did it have really cool gimmicks? Also, yes. And they also experimented with a smaller team for it as well. The team, if you vaguely remember with any of these core fucking toddler memories of yours, but the team for Ninja Storm was only 3. It was only 3 guys.
Huh.
Or 2 guys and 1 girl. But still, the core team was only 3 people. And they kept that going into the series following it as well, right? But the core team is only 3 people. They picked up 2 guys, right? The Thunder and Lightning Beetle guys. Basically Beetleborgs, but, you know, they were cool. And they picked up, you know, the Green Ninja dude. But for the most part, the main team was 3 guys. And that was kind of cool as a kid, seeing, like, a much tighter group, right? And because the cast was so small, they could be more developed as a result, too. The female character actually had, like, a real, you know, character arc and everything. And technically speaking, they avoided her being, you know, a love interest. Which, as a child, was a shame, because the actress that plays the female Blue Ranger in that series was hot as shit. But we never got any, like, serious romance subplots with her, unfortunately. They were all just really good friends, which, you know, I can appreciate that. Dino Thunder is another one I really like, and that came out right after Ninja Storm. Dino Thunder would have been the year after, by the way, for you, Alex. Going into, like, what's it called? Going into 2005. So you still would have gotten a chance to be exposed to that as well. Like, you know, at a good age for that, too. Just, you know. The Dino Thunder stuff was where I hit my peak for Power Rangers fanaticism. Because I had the costume that I dressed up for in Halloween. I had all of the Megazords they released. I bought any of the tie-in, you know, like books or graphic novels that were related to them. I bought a box set of the entire series. I had the Morpher for them that I wore on my Halloween costume with the weapon that corresponded to the Ranger I was dressed as. I had completely licensed merch on myself for Halloween that year, just for that series. And the main reason for that, by the way, is because if anybody didn't know, which I don't know why you would, I love dinosaurs. Like, I'm a really, really big dinosaur guy. Huge fan of dinosaurs. And that series, nothing but dinosaurs. Really cool. Even the original series, by the way, nothing but dinosaurs. A mammoth or mastodon is not a dinosaur. Neither is a saber-toothed tiger. Not even a pterodactyl is a dinosaur, you sick fucks. But, doesn't matter. We can ignore that. I don't need to be mad at, the original series for having dinosaurs, even though they're not dinosaurs. Dino Thunder also didn't have full dinosaurs either, right? They had the pterodactyl technically, and they also had, I guess, a Quetzalcoatlus. It was just a big pterodactyl. They didn't have the right shape head for it because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to talk dinosaur shit to you, but I really like Dino Thunder because it had cool dinosaurs in it. Mystic Force came out two years after Dino Thunder and was also really cool. It was a magic one. Everybody had capes, and they all had wands, which are also cell phones. It's very fun. And they also have one of my favorite theme songs for any of the seasons for Power Rangers. Mostly because it's like just the least on-tone, wackish shit you've ever heard. It's just, what is the music that the kids listen to nowadays? And they turned that into the theme song. And then they added mystical instruments to it as well, just because they had to. It was a magic-themed series for it. Very good. The last series I seriously watched, which I would possibly recommend to anyone who's interested, was Power Rangers Jungle Fury. That was released in 2008. I was getting out of the age range to seriously watch it, and also the channels that played it stopped playing it at times when I was conscious. Because I became old enough where I refused to wake up before 7 a.m., which means I was not at the right time frame to watch the Power Rangers on TV, because I was too busy sleeping and then going to school. Jungle Fury was also very good. Big fan of Jungle Fury, if anybody has any interest in watching that at all. They have a lot of off-color Power Rangers in that series, which, for anyone who actually enjoys Power Rangers, that is one of the subtly most hypest shit that they have, ever, in any series, is whenever they introduce off-color Rangers. Like, oh my god, that guy's purple. I don't know what purple means, but I like it. Or, this one's gold. That's really sick. What the fuck does that mean? He's only showed up in 2 episodes? My favorite character. For the sake of just, wrapping up the video, or the episode here, and also just genuinely to talk to anybody who wants to legitimately look into any of this type of stuff. And this, of course, will also go to you, Alex, right? For wanting to see the series. There is something legitimately entertaining and special about these things, right? Power Rangers, even Beetleborgs, the tattooed teenagers, alien fighting teenagers from Beverly Hills. All of these series have such a very specific charm and character to them that there is genuine entertainment to be had from all of the series that they've released, even the shittier ones. And for someone who wants to watch a series that is dumb but means well, that can just relax, I highly recommend anything in this genre of media.
I guess to sort of wrap this up on my end, I mean, obviously Tokusatsu's influence has been felt throughout everything in pop culture, obviously Power Rangers, but also stuff even Dragon Ball picked up on it with the Ginyu Force and whatnot, and I'm sure other series as well, but that's sort of the main one that sticks out to me.
We got Dragon Ball Super Heroes, right? And by the way, for people who read the manga, the Dragon Ball Super Hero manga also includes references to it because, well, they brought the Saiyamen back. You have both, Trunks and Goten picking up Gohan's mantle. Even Gohan being Super Saiyaman, right? That's also a reference to Tokusatsu stuff.
Yeah, so obviously Dragon Ball did it, and then I'm sure other series followed in its wake. In Yu-Gi-Oh, for instance, there's the Action Heroes or whatever that. It's not GT, it's GX, right?
Yeah, it's GX. Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh GT and Dragon Ball GX.
Shit, I forgot. What were their fucking names
again? The Elemental Heroes?
Yes, the Elemental Heroes.
Jaden's entire deck was basically just a bunch of Power Rangers.
Yeah, those are...
Or Kamen Riders, I should say. Yeah, exactly. Even though his character in the series is supposed to be inspired by Western comics as well.
So I guess it's probably
it's a bit of both.
Then.
Yeah, well, the more direct reference to Tokusatsu stuff are the masked heroes, which he has,
right? Okay.
As well. They legitimately have masks that are able to change shape so that they have different powers and stuff. It's a much more clear homage. However, we got Yu-Gi-Oh stuff like Kaiba Man. Literally, Kaiba dresses as a Blue Eyes White Dragon. Men cannot get enough of that thing, and he's functionally just basically a Power Ranger as well. I mean, for the best like clear line, like through line for Tokusatsu in Japan, right? By comparison to America, is that they're basically Japan superheroes. Think of Western superheroes, right? Like DC and Marvel, right? That aesthetic in America is basically what Tokusatsu is to Japan. Because they don't have like traditional superheroes like Americans do. Like even My Hero's weird in the fact that they expressly take influence from Western superheroes. The whole hero-themed things in My Hero Academia is specifically based off of Western heroes, not Japanese ones, because their superhero media is Tokusatsu stuff.
I've been like racking my brain for like the past few minutes trying to think of other instances of that. I don't know. You get it, right? We're not covering anything that hasn't been.
You have female Tokusatsu characters or female Kamen Riders in the form of magical girls.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've heard the comparison that they're like two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah, very very similar. So a lot of the magical girl genre is functionally just Power Rangers but pretty. Somehow way more powerful. That's an entire different can of worms. But apparently, anyone who isn't aware, magical girls do not fuck with them. No matter how much you want to, do not do it. They can destroy galaxies. It doesn't make sense. Sailor Moon could fight Goku. I don't know why it makes sense, but it's possible. Regardless, though, the magical girls, though, are very much similar, right? They're high school characters, an ensemble cast, different colors, have magical transformations based off of a singular item of some kind, right, that can make them transform. And when they are transformed, they are connected to a larger universe with, like, villains and also with similar powers and stuff. The parallels just write themselves. It's very easy to make the connection once you get past the aesthetic differences. Kind of a losing game trying to find all the references to this type of stuff in Japanese media.
Yeah,
because it's so pervasive.
It's more of a who's not.
Because there's shit that's off genre that still references to like this type of media. I've seen I think if I'm remembering correctly, but I've seen like generic action figures in horror manga where the action figure is literally just a Kamen Rider. And it's a horror manga. You see people being torn to pieces, and in the background on someone's desk is just a Kamen Rider posing, doing a fancy, bug dab, which is also funny in modern context because the most famous Kamen Rider pose is functionally them just dabbing. It's very good. It's gotten better with age because of the reference that they unintentionally made.
I haven't thought of a theme for next episode, but we will get it out by next month. So don't you worry about that. One thing, breaking news on the newest One Piece chapter, we got the names of the other Vice Admirals that are there.
Including the one with like a billion chins?
Yes, that one is Red King. There's Pomsky, Tosa. That's the one, Tosa's the one with the big beard. Urban, he's the one with he looks like kind of like Oars.
Oh, he does kind of look like Oars.
The one with like the lipstick and the glasses is Hound. The one with the sword on his head is Guillotine. And then the one with the Pomsky is the one with the big chin and like the handlebar mustache.
Yeah, out of the designs that they released for these newer, are they actual admirals or vice admirals? Of the designs they released of the vice admirals, I like Pomsky's the best. It has the most character. The other ones just are gags.
We don't have the same caliber of Strawberry or Onigumo or.
Oh, what's the cool guy who has the mask and the big sword that we like?
That is Bastille.
Yeah, Bastille's
or,
also really cool.
Yeah, or Smoker. Where the fuck is Smoker?
Yeah, where is Smoker?
He should have been on
that is kind of weird.
helping Sword get. I'm pretty sure Tashigi was there, right?
I have a connection to that now. Yeah. Smoker probably has something else important that they were sent to do because they're
I should hope. Honestly,
I'd imagine that he's developed.
I feel bad for Smoker. He really got a bad rap on at Punk Hazard.
Punk Hazard, yeah. Well, they had to do the gag with the body swap for that one. Because they did it with Nami, but they couldn't be as explicit with it. But Smoker's way more nonchalant about it than Sanji is, so it wouldn't be as perverted, intentionally anyway, if he's just, in a big booba lady's body. Yeah, I mean, I do feel bad for Smoker, though. He's been shafted a little bit, not just from Punk Hazard, just in general, in the second half of the story, right? Because he was introduced really early. as like somebody who was cool, and he was also one of the first Marines we saw besides Kobe, who we got to like see get turned basically, right, by like Luffy's ideology, and that hasn't really meant anything.
Not yet.
I'm sure it will be important when we end up fighting the actual world government. And
well, that's this week. We'll, like I said, we'll try to get a theme ready by next week. But thanks for stopping by.
We are going to dive kick out of this video and
right,
see you next time.
See you later, everybody.
All right. See ya.